Hello guys. Welcome to Pika Fiction. So in this video, we will see what if Ash's reward for defeating Team Rocket was a harem led by Jessie and Cassidy. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The spoils of war. The silence over Viridian City was heavier than the artillery fire that had preceded it. It was a silence made of dust, settling concrete, and the ozone-sharp scent of discharged energy. The war against Team Rocket, a 3-year grinder that had turned the Kanto and Johto regions into a chessboard of trenches and occupation zones, was effectively over. Ash Ketchum stood on the precipice of the crumbled Viridian gym, looking down into the crater where the Earth badge had once hung. He was 22, but the mirror hadn't reflected a young man in a long time. His signature red hat was gone, lost somewhere in the siege of Saffron, replaced by the erratic wind that whipped his raven hair across a face marked by a thin, pale scar running from his jaw to his collarbone. At his heel, Pikachu sat motionless. The electric mouse didn't spark or twitch. He was a coiled spring, his fur matted with grime, eyes scanning the perimeter with the 1,000-yard stare of a creature that had forgotten how to play. "It's done, Ash." The voice came from behind him. Charles Goodshow, the chairman of the Pokemon League, picked his way through the rubble. He looked older, his once jovial face drawn tight with the stress of wartime politics. He was flanked by 4 ace trainers in tactical gear, their hands hovering near the Pokeballs at their belts. Ash didn't turn around. He kept his eyes on the crater where Giovanni was currently being shackled by the International Police. Is it? The cells in Mahogany are still active. The Sevi Islands are a mess. Leaderless cells die out, Goodshow said, stepping closer. He stopped 5 feet away. The air around Ash hummed. A low-frequency vibration of aura that made the hair on Goodshow's arms stand up. It was the pressure of the world monarch, the man who had surpassed the title of champion and become something else. The head of the snake is cut. The body will thrash, but it will rot. Ash finally turned. His eyes, once a warm brown, seemed to glow with a faint, amber luminescence before fading back to normal. "You didn't come here to tell me the weather report, Charles. What do the suits at Indigo Plateau want?" Goodshow sighed, signaling his guards to step back. "They want to thank you, and they want to ensure the peace holds. The Treaty of Indigo was signed an hour ago. As the primary belligerent force against Rocket, and the one who personally subdued Giovanni, the spoils of war legally fall to you." Ash let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Spoils. I don't want money, and I don't want titles." "We know," Goodshow said quietly, "but we have a problem. A personnel problem. There are high-ranking operatives, women who were groomed for command, who know where every body is buried, every hidden account, every sleeper agent. The League wants them executed for war crimes. The public wants a show trial." "Let them have it," Ash said, turning to walk away. "If we kill them, the dead man switches activate," Goodshow called out, desperation bleeding into his voice. "Viruses in the PC storage system. Gas attacks in Goldenrod. We can't execute them, and we can't imprison them in standard containment because they will break out or be broken out. They need a warden. Someone whose power exceeds the mechanical limits of a prison." Ash stopped. The wind howled through the ruins. "You want me to be a jailer." "We want you to be a custodian," Goodshow corrected. "Under the old rights of the League, laws from the feudal era that we've reinstated for this crisis. They're being bonded to you. Rehabilitation through servitude. They live as long as they serve the monarch. If they harm you, the bond kills them. If you die, the bond kills them." Ash looked down at Pikachu. The mouse looked up, ears twitching. "Who are they?" Ash asked. Goodshow gestured to the darkness of a waiting armored transport, the Vanguard. The interior of the transport aircraft was dimly lit, smelling of hydraulic fluid and fear. Ash sat on the bench on the starboard side, his arms crossed over his chest. Opposite him sat 4 women, their wrists bound in heavy, magnetic suppression cuffs that glowed with a soft blue light. Jessie sat closest to the cockpit. Her crimson hair, usually teased into an impossible curve, hung limp and tangled around her shoulders. Her rocket uniform was torn at the shoulder, stained with soot. She didn't look at Ash. She stared at the floor, her jaw set so hard a muscle jumped in her cheek. She radiated a mixture of humiliation and murderous rage. Next to her was Cassidy. The blonde looked worse. She had a bandage wrapped around her forehead, and her usually pristine demeanor was shattered. But unlike Jessie, Cassidy was watching Ash. Her eyes were cold, calculating, dissecting him. She was looking for a weakness, a tremor, a sign of the boy she used to mock. She found none. Further down sat two others. Ariana, the executive who had once commanded the rocket forces in Johto, and a younger, fierce-eyed woman Ash recognized as Domino, the Black Tulip. The engines roared as the VTOL craft lifted off, banking hard away from Viridian. Ash didn't speak for 20 minutes. He let the silence stretch until it became a physical weight. He could feel their anxiety spiking. They expected him to scream, to gloat, or perhaps worse. They knew the stories of what happened to female operatives captured by lesser militias. "Pikachu," Ash said softly. "Pika. The cuffs." The women flinched. Jessie's head snapped up. "Going to make it easier for yourself, brat?" She spat, the venom in her voice cracked by exhaustion. "Go ahead. Do what you want. You think I haven't dealt with power-tripping warlords before?" Ash ignored her. He reached into his tactical vest, pulled out a small remote, and pressed a sequence of buttons. Click. Hiss. The magnetic cuffs on all four women disengaged and fell to the metal floor with a heavy clang. The silence that followed was absolute. Jessie rubbed her wrists, staring at Ash with wide, confused eyes. Cassidy froze, her hands hovering halfway to her own wrists, her calculations stalled. "I don't allow chains in my unit," Ash said, his voice level, barely rising above the drone of the engines. "Unit?" Cassidy asked, her voice raspy. "We're prisoners, catch 'em. Slaves. That's what the bond is. Don't dress it up." "The League thinks you're prisoners," Ash replied, meeting her gaze. "The League thinks I'm taking you to Mount Silver to lock you in a dungeon and watch you rot. But the League is full of cowards who sit in air-conditioned offices while we bleed." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. The casual posture was deceptive. Everyone in the transport knew he could close the distance and snap a neck before they could blink. "I'm going to Mount Silver because it's the only place on the continent where I can think," Ash said. "You're coming with me because you're too dangerous to be left in a cell and too valuable to be executed. I don't want servants. I don't want rehabilitation. I want soldiers." Jessie laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. "Soldiers? For who? The war is over. You won. You're the king of the world." "The war with Giovanni is over," Ash said. He looked out the viewport, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the clouds in violent shades of purple and bruised black. "But something else is coming. I can feel it in the aura. The earth is screaming. And when it hits, I'm going to need people who aren't afraid to get their hands dirty. People who don't care about League regulations." He looked back at them. "You hate me. Good, hold on to that. Hate keeps you sharp. But from this moment on, you answer to me. Not because of a magical contract, but because I am the only thing standing between you and a firing squad." Ariana spoke for the first time, her voice smooth, tempered by years of command. "And if we refuse? If we take this opportunity, right now, to slit your throat?" Ash didn't move. He didn't reach for a pokeball. He simply flared his aura. It wasn't a blast. It was a sudden, crushing increase in atmospheric pressure. The air in the cabin turned to lead. The lights flickered. The women felt a primal instinct, deep in their hindbrains, screaming at them to submit to the predator in the room. It lasted for a second, then vanished. "You're welcome to try," Ash said mildly, "but I'd hate to clean the upholstery." Cassidy let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She looked at Jessie, then back at Ash. A strange glint entered her eyes. It wasn't fear anymore. It was the dawning realization that the incompetent child they had chased for years was dead, and something magnificent had taken his place. "Where exactly are we staying?" Cassidy asked. "Mount Silver is a wasteland." "It was," Ash said. "I made some renovations." The landing zone at Mount Silver was a plateau carved directly into the mountainside, 3,000 meters above sea level. The air here was thin and bit like a razor. Snow swirled in chaotic vortices, illuminated by the landing lights of the VTOL. As the ramp lowered, the cold rushed in, instantly numbing exposed skin. Ash walked out first, his coat flapping. He didn't shiver. Jessie stepped out, hugging her arms to her chest. "Renovations? she shouted over the wind. "It looks like a pile of rocks." She was right, partially. The exterior was jagged stone, blending seamlessly into the mountain. But as Ash approached a massive slab of granite, he placed his palm against it. A web of blue light scanned his hand, and the rock groaned, sliding aside to reveal a warm, amber-lit hangar bay cut deep into the mountain's heart. "Tyranitar did the excavation," Ash explained over his shoulder as the women followed him inside, shivering. "Metagross handled the structural supports." Inside, the base was Spartan but impressive. High ceilings, reinforced concrete, walls lined with monitors and equipment. A Charizard was sleeping near a massive heating vent. It opened one eye as they entered, snorted a puff of smoke that smelled of sulfur, and went back to sleep. "This isn't a house," Domino whispered, looking around. "It's a fortress." "It's home," Ash corrected. "Quarters are down the hall to the right. You'll find gear, food, and medical supplies. No locks on the doors. I suggest you—" Boom. The explosion didn't come from inside. It came from the hangar entrance they had just walked through. The blast wave threw Jessie and Cassidy forward, sending them skidding across the polished concrete floor. Alarms instantly began to wail, bathing the hangar in rotating red light. Ash didn't stumble. He rode the shockwave, pivoting on his heel to face the entrance. Smoke billowed in, followed by the roar of engines. "Ambush!" Ariana screamed, scrambling to her feet. "We were tracked." Through the smoke, 3 heavily modified Skarmory swooped in, their steel wings gleaming. Riding on their backs were men in black tactical armor, not League, and not Standard Rocket. They wore the insignia of the Neo Rocket Splinter faction. A red R with a jagged slash through it. "Catch 'em." One of the riders amplified his voice through a helmet speaker. "The High Command sends its regards." 2 Fearow and a Salamence burst through the smoke behind the Skarmory. A hyperbeam began to charge in the Salamence's maw. Jessie scrambled backward, eyes wide. She had no Pokémon. She was defenseless. "Ash, do something." Ash didn't reach for his belt. He didn't call for Charizard. He simply stepped forward, placing himself between the incoming fire and the women. "Pikachu," Ash said, his voice cutting through the siren's wail. "Thunderbolt. Wide dispersion." Pikachu leapt from Ash's shoulder. In the air, the mouse didn't look like a pet. He looked like a storm god condensed into 10 pounds of fur. The electricity that erupted from him wasn't yellow. It was a blinding, white-hot gold. The Thunderbolt arc struck the lead Skarmory, chain reacted to the second, and slammed into the ceiling supports, bringing down a deluge of rocks on the third. The riders screamed as their mounts convulsed and dropped from the air. But the Salamence had fired. The Hyperbeam, a lance of pure destruction, tore toward them. Cassidy squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the heat. It never came. She opened her eyes. Ash had raised one hand. A dome of translucent blue aura had materialized in front of him. The hyperbeam struck the barrier and scattered, harmlessly deflecting into the walls, melting the concrete but leaving the group untouched. Ash gritted his teeth, the veins in his neck bulging as he held the energy back. "Lucario," he roared. From the shadows of the upper gantry, a blue blur descended. Ash's Lucario didn't land. He impacted. He hit the ground with a shockwave that shattered the floor tiles, propelling himself upward instantly toward the Salamence. "Bone Rush," Ash commanded, his hand still holding the aura shield. Lucario materialized a staff of glowing blue energy and spun it like a propeller. He slammed it into the Salamence's jaw, sending the dragon spiraling down into the snow outside. The remaining Neo Rocket soldiers on the ground opened fire with assault rifles. Bullets sparked against Ash's aura shield. "Get behind cover," Ash barked at the women, not looking back. "We can't fight," Jessie yelled, adrenaline overriding her fear. "Give us Pokémon." "No time," Ash said. He dropped the shield and moved. To the women, it was a blur. To Ash, the world slowed down. He moved with the enhanced speed of an Aura Guardian. He closed the distance to the nearest gunman, ducked under a rifle butt, and drove his palm into the man's solar plexus. The soldier flew back 20 feet, unconscious before he hit the wall. Ash grabbed a falling rifle from the air, stripped the magazine in one fluid motion, and used the heavy stock to parry a machete strike from another attacker. He spun, sweeping the attacker's legs, and Pikachu finished the job with an iron tail to the helmet. It was brutal. It was efficient. It was a dance of violence that Jessie and Cassidy had never seen from a trainer. Trainers stood back. Trainers gave orders. Ash Ketchum was fighting on the front line, his fists glowing with blue light, moving in perfect synchronization with Pikachu and Lucario. In under 2 minutes, it was over. 12 attackers lay unconscious or groaning on the hangar floor. The Salamence was buried under a pile of snow outside. The Skarmory were smoking wrecks. Ash stood in the center of the carnage, his chest heaving slightly. He wiped a smear of blood from his cheek. Not his own. The aura faded from his skin, leaving him looking mortal again. He turned to the women. They were huddled behind a crate of supplies, staring at him with a mixture of horror and awe. Ash walked over to a wall panel and punched in a code. The blast doors slammed shut, sealing the wind and snow outside. The alarms cut off, leaving only the sound of the cooling metal and heavy breathing. He walked over to Jessie, extending a hand to help her up. She looked at his hand, then up at his face. Her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She had spent years chasing a child. The man standing in front of her was a warlord. She took his hand. His grip was rough, warm, and solid. He pulled her to her feet with effortless strength. "You missed a spot," Jessie said, her voice trembling slightly as she tried to regain her composure. She pointed to a Neo-rocket soldier stirring near the door. Ash didn't look. Gengar. A shadow detached itself from the floor near the soldier. Gengar rose, grinning with malicious glee, and tapped the soldier on the forehead. The man slumped back into a nightmare-filled sleep. "Go to your quarters," Ash said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Clean up. Rest. We start at 0600. "Start what?" Cassidy asked, standing up and brushing dust from her knees. She looked at the carnage around them. "What could we possibly do that you can't do yourself?" Ash looked at the four of them. He saw the potential beneath the trauma. He saw the steel that Giovanni had forged but failed to temper. "They knew we were here," Ash said darkly. "That implies a leak in the lead. Someone sold us out before we even landed." He walked past them, heading toward the command center. He stopped at the doorway and looked back, his silhouette framed by the blinking lights of the server banks. "I can fight wars," Ash said. "I can crush mountains. But I can't see knives in the dark. That's what you're for." He met Jessie's eyes. "Welcome to the team." He disappeared into the command room. Jessie stood there for a long moment, the warmth of his hand still lingering on hers. She looked at Cassidy. "He's insane," Domino whispered. "No," Cassidy said, a slow, dangerous smile touching her lips for the first time in years. She looked at the fallen soldiers, then at the door where Ash had gone. "He's the winning side." Jessie smoothed her hair. She felt a strange sensation in her chest, not the crushing weight of defeat, but the sparking ember of ambition. She had always wanted to rule the world. Standing in the fortress of the strongest man alive, she realized she might finally have found the way to do it. "Come on," Jessie said, her voice regaining its old command. "Let's find the showers. If we're going to be his Praetorian Guard, I refuse to look like a refugee." Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. The cold front. The transition from the biting frost of Mount Silver to the humid, salt-heavy air of the Orange Archipelago was jarring enough to induce physical whiplash. The transport craft banked low over the azure waters, kicking up sprays of white foam as it approached Shamuti Island. Unlike the hidden bunker in the mountains, this was not a hole in the ground, it was a statement. The central shrine of Shamuti sat atop the cliffs like a crown of ice and stone, ancient and imposing. But below it, woven into the rock and jungle, was a sprawling compound of sleek glass and timber. It didn't look like a military base, it looked like a sanctuary. Wild Pokemon, Wingull, Slowbro, even a few rare Lapras, moved freely through the perimeter, unbothered by the hum of the landing repulsors. Jessie stepped onto the landing pad, her boots sinking slightly into the heat-softened tarmac. She shielded her eyes against the tropical sun, instantly regretting the heavy wool coat she grabbed from the mountain stockpiles. She shed it, letting it drop to the ground, revealing the black tactical undersuit Ash had issued them. "So," Cassidy said, stepping up beside her, her voice dripping with her trademark cynicism, "from a frozen hellhole to a tourist trap. Does the Monarch have a timeshare?" "Shamuti is neutral ground," Ariana noted, her eyes scanning the cliffline, instinctively looking for sniper nests. Technically, under the Orange League Charter, this island has sovereignty. The Indigo League has no jurisdiction here. Which makes it the perfect place to hide, Jessie muttered. She glared at Cassidy. And stay out of my light. You're casting a shadow. You've been living in a shadow your whole life, Jess, Cassidy shot back smoothly. I'm just the first one honest enough to tell you. Enough. Ash's voice cut through the humidity like a blade. He walked down the ramp, Pikachu perched on his shoulder. He wore loose cargo pants and a dark gray tank top, exposing the corded muscle of his arms and the scars that mapped his history of violence. He carried a crate of supplies on one shoulder that would have taken 2 normal men to lift. This isn't a vacation, Ash said, not breaking stride as he headed toward the main complex. And it isn't a hideout. It's a training ground. Unpack your gear in the East Wing. You have 1 hour to acclimate. Then meet me in the courtyard. For what? Domino asked, trailing behind him, her steps silent. Ash paused at the door. He looked back, his expression unreadable. For the reason you're still breathing. To see if you can be useful. The East Wing was luxurious by any standard, let alone for prisoners of war. The rooms opened onto a veranda overlooking the ocean, but the atmosphere inside was toxic. Jessie slammed her locker shut. He treats us like cadets. I was commanding field operations while he was still in diapers. You were commanding failed operations, Cassidy corrected, meticulously arranging her medical kit on her bed. She didn't look up. Let's face facts, Jessie. We lost. Giovanni is in chains. The organization is dust. We are the scraps the victor threw to his dogs. I am not a scrap. Jessie spun around, her face flushing red. I am a top-tier operative. I have captured. Nothing, Cassidy interrupted, finally meeting her gaze. Her blue eyes were icy. You captured nothing. You chased a rat for 5 years and blew the budget of 3 separate departments. The only reason you're here is because Ketchum has some sentimental defect in his brain. Jessie lunged. It wasn't a calculated strike, it was a feral swipe of claws. Cassidy was ready. She sidestepped, grabbed Jessie's wrist, and used the momentum to slam Jessie face first into the mattress. But Jessie was a survivor of the streets. She twisted her body, wrapping her legs around Cassidy's waist and torquing them both to the floor in a tangle of limbs and curses. Stop it! Ariana barked from the doorway. The older woman didn't raise her voice, but the authority in it froze them. Ariana walked into the room, looking at the 2 younger women with disdain. You are fighting over hierarchy in a graveyard, Ariana said coldly. Look outside. She gestured to the glass doors. Down in the courtyard, Ash was moving. He wasn't using Pokemon. He was moving through a series of forms, martial arts that blended fluidity with devastating impact. He struck a wooden training dummy with an open palm, and the wood didn't just crack. It exploded backward as if hit by a cannonball. That, Ariana said, pointing at Ash, is a monster. He uses aura like a Pokemon uses type energy. If you 2 want to kill each other, fine. But do it after we figure out how to survive him. Domino sat in the corner, sharpening a combat knife. She hadn't spoken a word. She watched Ash through the window, her eyes narrowing. He's just a man, Domino whispered. Everyone bleeds. The courtyard was a circle of packed earth surrounded by ancient stone pillars. The heat was oppressive, a wet blanket that made breathing difficult. Ash stood in the center. He had been training for an hour, but he wasn't winded. A faint blue shimmer clung to his skin, his aura, active and regulating his body temperature. The 4 women stood before him. They wore workout gear, but they looked like they were attending a funeral. In the old world, Ash began, pacing slowly. Trainers stood in the back. They gave orders. They treated their Pokemon like tools or pets. That world died when Giovanni Carpet bombed Saffron City. He stopped in front of Jessie. He was close enough that she could smell the ozone and sea salt on him. My enemies, Ash said, don't care about rules. They will target you to get to your Pokemon. They will kill your Pokemon to get to you. If you cannot fight alongside them, you are a liability. We know how to fight, Jessie snapped, her pride stinging. I've gone hand to hand with Interpol agents. Show me, Ash said. He didn't take a stance. He just stood there, arms loose at his sides. Jessie didn't hesitate. She wanted to wipe that calm, arrogant look off his face. She feinted a left jab, then drove a vicious right kick toward his ribs. a move that would have cracked bone on a normal man. Ash didn't block. He stepped into the kick. Before Jessie's shin could connect, Ash was inside her guard. He placed a hand on her chest and pushed. It wasn't a strike, just a displacement of mass. Jessie flew backward 10 feet, landing hard in the dirt. Too slow, Ash said. You broadcast your intent. You were angry. Anger makes you predictable. Cassidy moved then, calculating that Ash was distracted. She came in low, sweeping for his legs, while Domino, moving like a shadow, flanked him from the right, aiming a chop at his neck. Ash closed his eyes. He sensed the disturbance in the air currents. He felt the intent, Cassidy's cold logic, Domino's sharp killing instinct. He jumped. Not a normal jump, but an aura-enhanced leap that took him 12 feet into the air. Cassidy's sweep hit empty air. Domino's chop missed. Ash landed softly behind them. Domino, you have no killing intent until the last second. Good. Cassidy, you overthink. You hesitated because you were worried about hitting Jessie. He opened his eyes. Again. For the next 2 hours, he dismantled them. He didn't hurt them, not really. He bruised their egos and their bodies, but he never broke a bone. He tossed them like ragdolls, deflected their strikes, and outmaneuvered their best strategies. By sunset, they were lying in the dirt, gasping for air, sweat soaking their clothes. Ash was barely glistening. You rely on your Pokémon to be your strength, Ash said, looking down at them. But if you are weak, your Pokémon will worry about you. They will hesitate to protect you. Strength is shared. If you are strong, they can be free. He extended a hand to Jessie again. She looked at it. She was exhausted, humiliated, and sore. But as she looked up, she saw something in his face. He wasn't mocking her. He was disappointed. No, he was patient. She grabbed his hand. This time, when he pulled her up, she stumbled. Her legs were jelly. She fell forward, colliding with his chest. Ash caught her reflexively. His hands gripped her arms to steady her. For a split second, their skin contact lingered. Ash's aura was high, flaring from the exertion. Jessie had no psychic shielding. Snap. The world fell away. Jessie wasn't in the courtyard. She was in a dark void. She felt cold, a deep, freezing loneliness that hollowed out her bones. She felt the weight of 1,000 eyes watching her, waiting for her to fail. She felt the crushing guilt of seeing a city burn, the screams of Pokémon dying in the trenches of Johto. She felt the desperate, clawing need to protect everyone, to be the wall that the darkness broke against, because if she didn't do it, no one else would. It was Ash's mind. It was his burden. Jessie. The voice snapped her back. She gasped, shoving herself away from him, her eyes wide and terrified. Ash stumbled back a step, his hand going to his temple. The blue glow around him flickered and died. He looked at her, his eyes unguarded for the first time. He looked young and incredibly tired. Ash started, then stopped. He cleared his throat, the mask of the monarch sliding back into place. That's enough for today. Showers. Dinner in the mess hall at 1900. He turned and walked away quickly, Pikachu scrambling to catch up. Jessie stood trembling in the fading light. What happened? Cassidy asked, wiping dirt from her cheek. You look like you saw a ghost. I didn't see a ghost, Jessie whispered, watching Ash's retreating back. I saw him. Night fell over Shimuti like a heavy velvet curtain. The jungle came alive with the sounds of nocturnal Pokémon. In the command center, Ash sat in the dark, the only light coming from the glowing monitors. He was reviewing logistics reports from the Ranger Union, but his mind was elsewhere. He touched his chest where Jessie had collided with him. The connection had been accidental, a resonance frequency he hadn't anticipated. He had felt her, too. Beneath the vanity and the rage, he had felt a jagged, starving need for purpose. She didn't want money, she wanted to matter. You're playing with fire, Ash, a voice rumbled. Ash didn't look up. Mewtwo. The psychic-type legendary didn't materialize physically, he projected his consciousness into the room. These humans are broken. They are accustomed to treachery. You expose your throat to them hoping they will not bite. If I wanted obedient soldiers, I would have hired mercenaries, Ash murmured. I need people who know how the enemy thinks because they were the enemy. One of them does not seek redemption, Mewtwo warned. The one called the Black Tulip. Her mind is a labyrinth of locked doors. I know, Ash said. She's making her move tonight. And you will allow it? I need to know whose side Cassidy is on. The East Wing was silent. Jessie and Ariana were asleep, exhausted by the training. Domino was not asleep. She moved through the corridors with the silence of a Gengar. She wore black, her feet bare to muffle sound. In her hand was a ceramic blade, undetectable by metal scanners. She wasn't here for rehabilitation. Kincaid, the director of Sylph's special projects, had made her a counter-offer before she left the cell in Viridian. Kill the Monarch. Retrieve the aura data. Name your price. Domino reached the door to Ash's personal quarters. It was unlocked. Arrogance. She turned the handle slowly. Going somewhere? Domino froze. She didn't turn. She recognized the voice. Cassidy was leaning against the wall at the end of the hallway. She held a small, modified pistol, a taser unit stolen from the supply locker. Go back to bed, Cassidy, Domino whispered. This doesn't concern you. It concerns me if the lead carpet bombs this island because you murdered their golden boy, Cassidy said, stepping into the moonlight. You think Kincaid will extract you? You're a loose end. Once Ash is dead, this whole island becomes a crater to cover the evidence. I'm a professional, Domino hissed, turning to face her. I complete the contract. You're a fool, Cassidy countered. Look at him. Look at what he is. He isn't just a trainer. He's inevitable. He's soft, Domino spat. He let us live. That's a mistake. Domino lunged. She was faster than Cassidy. Much faster. She closed the 20 feet in a heartbeat, the ceramic knife flashing toward Cassidy's throat. Cassidy fired the taser. Domino batted the wires aside with her free hand, spinning into a roundhouse kick that knocked the gun from Cassidy's grip. Domino pinned Cassidy against the wall, the knife pressing against her jugular. Stay out of my way, Domino snarled. Drop it. The command didn't come from Cassidy. Domino froze. The air pressure in the hallway dropped. Ash stood at the other end of the hall. He hadn't been in his room. He was leaning against the doorframe of the mess hall, holding a mug of tea. He looked bored. I told you, Ash said, sipping his tea. I can't see knives in the dark, but I can hear a heartbeat accelerate from 3 rooms away. Domino pushed off Cassidy and turned toward Ash, crouching into a combat stance. You knew. I suspected, Ash said. He walked toward them. He wasn't rushing. Kincaid likes his insurance policies. I can kill you before you summon a Pokemon, Domino threatened, though her voice wavered. The pressure of his aura was beginning to weigh on her lungs. Probably, Ash admitted, but then you'd have to deal with her. He pointed a thumb behind Domino. Domino sensed the shift in air pressure too late. She spun around. Jessie was standing there. She looked like a banshee, hair wild, eyes blazing with a fury that made the darkness recoil. She wasn't holding a weapon. She was holding a lamp she had ripped from the bedside table. You want to ruin this? Jessie screamed. I finally get a clean bed and a chance to be something other than a joke, and you want to ruin it? Jessie swung the lamp with the force of a desperate woman. Domino dodged, but the distraction was enough. Cassidy swept Domino's legs. As the assassin hit the floor, Ash was there. He didn't strike. He knelt, placing one finger on Domino's forehead. Sleep. A pulse of aura transferred directly into her neural cortex. Domino's eyes rolled back, and she slumped into unconsciousness. The hallway fell silent. Cassidy rubbed her throat where the knife had pressed. Jessie stood heaving, clutching the broken lamp. Ash looked at Cassidy. You stepped in. You could have let her do it. She's reckless, Cassidy rasped. And, I don't like Kincaid. Good enough, Ash said. He scooped Domino up in his arms as easily as if she were a child. Ariana is awake. She's watching from her door. Go back to sleep. We have work to do tomorrow. You're not going to lock her up? Jessie asked, bewildered. She tried to kill you. Ash looked down at the sleeping assassin. She tried to complete a mission. That's loyalty to a contract. I just need to change who holds the contract. He carried Domino away toward the med bay. Jessie dropped the lamp. She looked at Cassidy. For the first time in 10 years, there was no snark. No rivalry. He's crazy, Jessie said. Yeah, Cassidy agreed, sliding down the wall to sit on the floor. But he's our crazy. The next morning, the atmosphere had shifted. It wasn't warmer, but the tension had changed flavor. It was no longer the tension of prisoners planning an escape. It was the tension of a crew waiting for the captain's orders. Domino sat at the breakfast table, rubbing her temple. She wasn't restrained. She ate her eggs in silence. Ash hadn't said a word to her, which terrified her more than any threat. Ash entered the mess hall. He looked grim. He held a datapad in his hand. "Clear the table," he ordered. Ariana swept the plates aside. Ash placed the datapad in the center and activated the holographic projector. A grainy, distorted video played. It showed a mountain range in the Kalos region. The sky was gray. Suddenly, a streak of blue fire tore across the screen. Articuno. The legendary bird was flying erratically, one wing trailing smoke. Then, 3 black shapes pursued it. They weren't Pokemon. They were sleek, triangular drones with no markings. They fired beams of green energy, cohesive plasma. The beams struck Articuno. The bird screamed, a sound that the audio pickup rendered as a distorted shriek, and plummeted from the sky, crashing into the valley below. The video cut to static. Silence reigned in the mess hall. "That was 12 hours ago," Ash said quietly. "League sensors didn't pick it up. A freelance ranger caught it on a trail cam." "Those drones," Domino said, leaning forward, her professional curiosity overriding her shame. "That's Sylph tech. High-altitude interceptors. Prototype stage." "They shot down a god," Jessie whispered, horrified. "Why? You can't catch a legendary with a drone." "They don't want to catch it," Ash said. His fists clenched on the table, the plastic groaning under the pressure. "They want its DNA. Blood, feathers, bone. They're harvesting them." "For what?" Cassidy asked. "Project Deicide," Ash said. "The death of gods." He looked at the 4 of them. The hesitation was gone from his eyes. "Pack your bags. We're going to Kalos. There's a gala being held by the Sylph Board of Directors in Lumiose City to celebrate their security advancements. We're going to crash the party." "We're spies now?" Jessie asked, a small, wicked smile touching her lips. "No," Ash said, turning to leave. "You're the distractions. I'm the hammer." Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. Shadows in the glass Lumiose City glittered like a fallen constellation. The prism tower pierced the night sky, bathing the boulevards in electric gold and violet light. It was the city of love, of art, and tonight, the epicenter of the greatest lie ever told. The Grand Hotel Richisime was hosting the Gala for Global Security, a black tie event celebrating the new partnership between the Pokemon League and Sylph Company. The streets were lined with limousines. The air smelled of expensive perfume and ozone. Ash Ketchum stepped out of a black hover car. The cameras flashed in a blinding strobe. He wasn't wearing his usual utilitarian gear. He wore a tuxedo that fit his frame like armor. Midnight blue, tailored to conceal the holster at the small of his back and the throwing knives in his sleeves. He didn't smile for the cameras. His expression was one of bored aristocratic detachment, a mask he had practiced with Ariana for 6 hours on the flight over. On his right arm was Jessie. The transformation was staggering. Gone was the wild, teasing hair of the rocket operative. Her crimson locks were swept up in an elegant chignon, held in place by pins that doubled as lockpicks. She wore a gown of emerald green silk that hugged every curve, cut dangerously low in the back. She looked like royalty. She walked with a predatory grace, soaking in the attention not with vanity, but with the cold calculation of a viper in a flower bed. On his left was Cassidy. She wore silver, a sleek column of satin that made her look like a blade of moonlight. Her blonde hair was loose, falling in soft waves. Her eyes scanned the crowd, cataloging faces, security details, and exit routes. Behind them, acting as personal assistants, were Ariana and Domino, dressed in severe black suits, carrying briefcases that contained not paperwork, but surveillance tech and explosives. "Smile, darling," Jessie murmured through her teeth, flashing a dazzling grin at a reporter. "You look like you're about to murder the caterer." "The caterer is safe," Ash replied, his voice barely moving his lips. "The head of security on the roof, however, has a sniper rifle aimed at us. Sector 4, by the gargoyle." "I see him," Cassidy whispered. "Standard League protocol or something worse?" "We'll find out inside," Ash said. He offered his arms to the women. "Shall we?" The ballroom was a sea of sharks in expensive suits. Champions, business magnates, and politicians mingled under crystal chandeliers. Ash moved through the room with a gravity that parted the crowd. He was the world monarch. Even those who hated him had to respect the sheer weight of his presence. Ash. Darling. Diantha, the champion of Kalos, swept toward them. She looked radiant in white, but her eyes were tight with worry. She embraced Ash, pulling him close. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered in his ear. "Kincaid is watching everything. He knows you have the rocket files." "That's why I brought them," Ash whispered back, pulling away with a polite smile. "Diantha, meet my associates, Jessica and Cassandra." Diantha's eyes flicked to the two women. She recognized them, of course. Her eyebrows rose slightly. "Bold choices for a security detail, Ash." "I prefer rehabilitation consultants," Ash said. "Mr. Ketchum." The voice was dry, rasping like sandpaper on stone. A man approached them. He was tall, gaunt, with skin the color of parchment and eyes hidden behind dark, circular glasses. He leaned on a cane topped with a piece of raw amber. "Director Kincaid." Behind him stood two men who didn't look like bodyguards. They looked like lab experiments. They were massive, silent, their eyes vacant. "Director," Ash said, his voice dropping an octave. The air between them grew cold. "I was surprised to see your name on the guest list," Kincaid said, smiling without showing teeth. "I assumed you would be busy playing warden to your pets." He glanced at Jessie and Cassidy with open contempt. Jessie stiffened. The insult was blatant. She felt the old rage bubbling up, the urge to scream, to summon Arbuk, to burn this smug patrician to the ground. Then she felt Ash's hand on the small of her back. His thumb pressed gently against her spine. A pulse of warmth, calm, steadying aura, flowed into her. "Steady," his voice echoed in her mind. Not spoken, but projected. Jessie smiled. A cruel, beautiful smile. "Oh, Director, we aren't pets. We're investments." Ash has a keen eye for potential that others squander. Kincaid's smile faltered for a microsecond. "Indeed. Well, enjoy the party. We have a presentation later that I think you'll find illuminating." He walked away, his hulking guards trailing him. "He smells like antiseptic and rot," Cassidy muttered. "He's nervous," Ash said. He didn't expect Jessie to talk back. "He thinks you're broken. Keep him thinking that." "Domino, Ariana," Ash spoke into his lapel comms. "Status?" "In position." Domino's voice crackled in his ear. "Server room is 5 floors down. Security is tight. Lasers, pressure plates. But they're using SILF Gen 4 encryption. I wrote the back door for GEN4. Get the data on the drones," Ash ordered. "Jessie, Cassidy. Mingle. Flirt. Steal access cards. I'm going to cause a scene." The plan was simple. Ash would draw attention. The women would draw blood. Ash moved to the center of the room near the ice sculpture of Agaridos. He was immediately surrounded by sycophants and minor nobles asking about his battle with Leon, asking for autographs. Meanwhile, Jessie worked the room. She spotted a VP of operations for SILF, a sweating, portly man who had clearly had too much champagne. "Oh," Jessie cried, stumbling dramatically and spilling her drink onto his suit. "I am so clumsy. Please, let me help you." While she dabbed at his lapel with a napkin, her deft fingers lifted the keycard from his inner pocket. She slipped it into her cleavage in one fluid motion. "You are too kind, my dear," the VP stammered, mesmerized by her smile. Save it for the audit, Jessie thought. Across the room, Cassidy was talking to a general from the Unova military. She was playing the role of the fascinated ingenue, asking questions about security protocols and response times that seemed innocent but were actually probing for gaps in the grid. "And surely, General, you have contingency plans for unnatural threats?" Cassidy asked, batting her eyelashes. "Of course," the general boasted, puffed up with pride. "We have the new type. Null units on standby in the basement. Nasty things. Synthetic beasts." Cassidy's smile froze. "Synthetic beasts in the basement. Ash," she whispered into her earring. "We have a problem. They aren't just data mining. They have prototypes in the building." "Copy." Ash's voice came back. "Domino, hurry up." In the server room, Domino was typing furiously. Ariana stood at the door, a silenced pistol in hand. Encryption broken, Domino muttered. Downloading file. Project Deicide. Subfolder. Omega. The screen flashed red. Access denied. Biometric override required. Damn it, Domino hissed. They locked the Omega file to Kincaid's retinal scan. Suddenly, the lights in the server room cut out. The emergency red lighting bathed them in blood. They know we're here, Ariana said calmly. She raised her gun. The ventilation grate above them exploded. Two creatures dropped into the room. They looked like Houndoom, but their skin was metallic, their eyes glowing red leads. They had no fur, only exposed cabling and synthetic muscle. Cyber hounds, Domino shouted, rolling under the desk as a jet of flamethrower fire scorched the spot where she had been standing. In the ballroom, the music stopped. The heavy double doors slammed shut. Magnetic locks engaged with a thud that shook the floor. Kincaid stood on the stage, microphone in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice echoing. "I'm afraid we have terrorists in the building. Rocket remnants. But fear not. This is an excellent opportunity for a live demonstration." He pointed his cane at Ash. "Seize him." The windows shattered. Rappelling into the ballroom were not men, but monsters. They were humanoid, clad in black armor, but their movements were wrong, jerky, twitching. Their helmets were visors of glowing purple light. "Shadow troopers," Ash said. He ripped off his bow tie. "Girls, get behind me." "Like hell," Jessie yelled. She hiked up her dress, ripped the slit to her thigh, and pulled two telescoping batons from her garter. Cassidy grabbed a silver serving tray from a passing waiter and scaled it like a frisbee, hitting a trooper in the throat. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Guests screamed and scrambled for cover. Ash didn't summon a Pokémon. He couldn't risk a stray attack hurting a civilian. He flared his aura. A trooper lunged at him with an electrified stun baton. Ash caught the baton with his bare hand, ignoring the sparks, and drove his elbow into the trooper's helmet. The visor shattered. Behind it wasn't a human face, but a blank, gray visage. A clone. "They're dolls," Ash shouted. "Don't hold back." Jessie was a whirlwind of green silk and violence. She ducked under a swing, cracked a trooper in the knee with her baton, then spun and smashed the second baton across his temple. She fought with a dancer's rhythm, vicious and theatrical. Cassidy was precise. She used the environment. She kicked a table into two attackers, then used the confusion to disarm one and turn his own weapon against him. But there were too many of them, and then, the floor in the center of the room opened. Rising on a hydraulic lift was a cage. Inside was a creature that made the air taste like copper. It was a Tyranitar, but its skin was black, pulsing with purple veins. Its eyes were white voids. A shadow Pokémon. "Kill the monarch," Kincaid commanded from the balcony. The shadow Tyranitar roared, a sound of pure agony and rage. It unleashed a dark pulse that swept across the room, shattering tables and throwing guests against the walls. Ash stood his ground. He crossed his arms, forming an aura shield to protect Jessie and Cassidy behind him. The impact drove him back 2 feet, his heels carving grooves into the parquet floor. "Ash, you can't fight that thing hand to hand." Cassidy screamed over the noise. "Use Pikachu." "Pikachu is guarding the exits to keep the civilians safe," Ash gritted out. "I have to handle this." The Tyranitar charged. It was a locomotive of hatred. Ash dropped the shield and ran toward it. "Is he suicidal?" Jessie shrieked. Ash slid on his knees under the Tyranitar's grasping claws. As he passed underneath, he placed his palm on the creature's stomach. Aura sphere. Internal pulse. He didn't fire the sphere, he detonated it directly against the beast's hide. The explosion lifted the 2-ton monster off its feet. It crashed onto its back, thrashing. But it didn't stay down. The purple veins pulsed brighter. It was healing. Regeneration, Ash realized. Nanomachines. He backed up, breathing hard. The shadow troopers were closing in on the women. "Jessie, Cassidy," Ash yelled. "Formation Delta." They looked at each other. They had practiced this only once, as a joke. The rocket special. Jessie grinned. With pleasure. Jessie ran at Cassidy. Cassidy cupped her hands. Jessie leapt, stepping into Cassidy's hands, and Cassidy launched her into the air. Jessie soared over the heads of the troopers. At the apex of her jump, she threw 3 small metal discs, flashbangs. Bang! 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 Blinding light filled the room. The troopers, relying on visual sensors, were blinded. Ash moved. He grabbed the confused Tyranitar by its tail, channeled every ounce of strength he had into his muscles, and spun. With a roar of effort, Ash swung the Tyranitar like a hammer, smashing it into the cluster of blinded troopers. Bodies and armor flew like skittles. He released the tail, sending the beast crashing into the stage, destroying Kincaid's podium. Ash stood in the center of the ruin, his tuxedo shredded, chest heaving. Kincaid was gone. "Domino," Ash shouted into the comms. "Do you have it?" "Got it," Domino panted. "And we rigged the servers to blow. We're evacuating via the service elevator." "Meet us on the roof," Ash ordered. He turned to Jessie and Cassidy. They were bruised, their dresses torn, hair wild. They looked magnificent. "You handle a baton well," Ash said to Jessie, wiping blood from his lip. Jessie smirked, though her hands were shaking. "I was the top of my class in melee, you know, before you met me," Ash finished. He walked over and put a hand on her shoulder. Then he looked at Cassidy and nodded. "Good work, both of you." Cassidy looked at the devastation. "We didn't act like bodyguards, we acted like a team." "The gala is ruined," Ash noted dryly. "I don't think we're getting our deposit back." A slow applause started from the balcony. Diantha was standing there. She had her Gardevoir out, having protected a group of civilians in the corner. "You certainly know how to make an exit, Champion Ketchum," Diantha called down. "Go. My guards will handle the cleanup. Get that data to safety." Ash nodded. "Let's go." They ran for the stairs. As they sprinted up the stairwell, Jessie looked at Ash's back. He had protected them. He had trusted them. And in the heat of the fight, when the chaos was absolute, he hadn't looked at them with suspicion. He had looked at them with pride. She felt a crack in the armor around her heart widen just a little bit more. "Hey," Jessie panted as they reached the roof door. "Next time? I want a gun." Ash kicked the door open into the cool night air. Charizard was waiting, hovering above the pad. "Earn it," Ash said, and for the first time, he smiled, a real, boyish grin that transformed his scarred face. They climbed onto the dragon's back as the sirens of Lumiose City began to wail below them. They rose into the sky, leaving the City of Lights behind, carrying the secrets that could dethrone the gods. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. The godless machine. The data recovered from the Sylph servers was a nightmare visualized. Back at the Shamuti base, the holographic table projected the files Domino had stolen. The images were grotesque. Biological blueprints of Pokémon spliced with machinery, DNA helixes twisted into unnatural shapes, and lists of harvest targets, legendary Pokémon. Type Omega, Cassidy read aloud, her face pale in the blue light of the hologram. Primary objective, neutralization of divine threats. Secondary objective, enforcement of human sovereignty. "They want to kill Arceus," Ash said. His voice was flat, devoid of emotion, but the air in the room vibrated with suppressed rage. "They think that by killing the creator, they can seize the plates and rewrite reality." "Can they?" Jessie asked. She was sitting on a crate, nursing a bruised ankle from the gala. "I mean, is it even possible?" "With enough power, anything is possible," Mewtwo's voice echoed in the room. The psychic clone materialized in the corner, arms crossed. "I was created to be the strongest. But this Omega is designed to be the end." Ash zoomed in on a map file. "The prototype facility isn't in Kanto. It's in the Hoenn Badlands, Sector 9. A decommissioned mining colony." "That area is a radiation zone," Ariana pointed out. "Volcanic activity, magnetic interference. Sensors don't work there." "Which is why it's perfect," Ash said. He stood up. "We leave in 10 minutes. Full combat gear. No tuxedos this time." The Hoenn Badlands were a graveyard of rock and ash. The sky was permanently choked with sulfurous clouds, turning the sun into a sickly yellow bruise. The team approached on foot. The magnetic interference was too strong for the aircraft to land close. They wore rebreathers and polarized goggles. The wind howled through the canyons, sounding like the screams of the damned. Ash took point. He had Lucario out, sensing aura signatures ahead. Jessie and Cassidy flanked him, armed with compact submachine guns Ash had requisitioned from the armory. They looked less like spies now and more like soldiers. Movement. Lucario growled telepathically. Hold, Ash signaled. Ahead of them, the canyon opened up into a vast crater. In the center sat a metallic structure that looked like a tumor growing out of the earth. Pipes vented black smoke into the air. The hum of heavy machinery vibrated through the soles of their boots. The entrance is guarded, Domino whispered, peering through her scope. 2 Claydol, and, what are those? Standing by the blast doors were 2 humanoid figures. They were encased in heavy, rusted power armor. They held massive Gatling guns. Mercenaries, Ash said. Heavy infantry, probably ex-magma. I can take the left one, Domino said. Do it. Domino fired. A single, suppressed shot. The bullet struck the left guard in the neck seal of his armor. He dropped without a sound. Simultaneously, Lucario fired an aura sphere that took the head off the right guard. Move up, Ash ordered. They sprinted across the open ground. The Claydol spun to attack, but Ash didn't break stride. Iron Tail. Pikachu leapt from Ash's shoulder, spinning like a buzzsaw. He sliced through the first Claydol. Ash punched the second one, his fist wrapped in aura, shattering its clay shell. They reached the blast doors. Domino hacked the keypad. The doors groaned and slid open. The smell hit them first. It wasn't sulfur anymore. It was the smell of meat and antiseptic. The interior of the facility was a labyrinth of dripping pipes and flickering lights. They moved deeper, descending into the bowels of the earth. This isn't a lab, Jessie whispered, looking into a glass observation cell they passed. Inside, a swalot was strapped to a table, wires drilled into its skull. It was twitching. This is a slaughterhouse. Keep moving, Ash said, his jaw tight. Don't look. They reached the central chamber. It was a massive cavern, hollowed out of the rock. In the center, suspended over a pit of magma, was a machine. It looked like a registeel, but it was colossal, 50 feet tall. Its body was open, revealing a cockpit. No, not a cockpit. A containment unit. Inside the unit was a Pokémon. A Latios. The Latios was screaming silently. Tubes were pumping a glowing green fluid out of its body and into the machine. Oh my god, Cassidy gagged. They're using it as a battery. We have to get it out, Ash said. He stepped onto the catwalk. Intruders. A voice boomed from the loudspeakers. Suddenly, the catwalks above them filled with soldiers. Not mercenaries this time. These were elite Sylph security. Open fire. Bullets hailed down on them. Cover, Ash roared. He threw up an aura shield, expanding it into a dome over the girls. Bullets sparked and whined as they ricocheted off the barrier. We're pinned. Ariana yelled, returning fire with her pistol. There are too many of them. Lucario. Pikachu. Charizard. Ash threw 3 balls. Charizard erupted in a roar of flames, bathing the upper catwalks in fire. Soldiers screamed and fell. Lucario leapt into the fray, a blur of blue violence. Jessie. Cassidy, on me. Ash dropped the shield and charged forward. He ran toward the control console at the end of the bridge. A heavy gunner stepped out, blocking the path. He revved a minigun. Ash slid. Greninja. The ninja frog Pokémon materialized from a splash of water, throwing a water shuriken that jammed the minigun's barrel. The gun exploded, taking the gunner with it. Ash reached the console. Domino, override the release mechanism. Domino sprinted to the terminal. She plugged in her datapad. It's encrypted. I need 2 minutes. You don't have 2 minutes. From the shadows of the machine, something emerged. It was a prototype. Type. Null. But it was wrong. It had no helmet to restrain its power. Its head was a mess of chimeric parts. Feline, avian, insectoid. It screeched, a sound that shattered glass. It lunged at Ash. Ash caught its claws. His boots skidded backward, sparks flying. The creature was incredibly strong, stronger than a Machamp. Ash, Jessie screamed. She raised her gun, but she couldn't fire without hitting him. Shoot the cooling pipes, Ash yelled, struggling to hold the beast back. Overhead. Jessie looked up. A massive pipe labeled liquid nitrogen. She aimed. She didn't hesitate. She fired a burst. The pipe burst. A jet of freezing liquid sprayed down, directly onto the type. Null. The creature howled as its limbs froze solid. Ash shattered its grip with a pulse of aura and kicked it into the magma pit below. Domino. Got it. The containment unit on the giant machine hissed. The clamps holding the Latios released. The dragon fell, weak and drained. Charizard swooped down and caught the Latios mid-air. Retreat. Ash ordered. This whole place is rigged to blow if the battery is removed. The escape was a blur of noise and fire. Explosions rocked the facility as the geothermal stabilizers failed. The ground shook violently. They reached the surface just as the blast doors began to seal. Go. Go. Ash shoved Cassidy through the gap. He threw Jessie through next. Ariana stumbled. A piece of falling debris struck her leg. She fell. Ariana. Ash turned back. The doors were closing. Ash grabbed Ariana and threw her toward the exit. Charizard. Grab her. Charizard snatched Ariana and pulled her through the closing gap. But Ash was still inside. Ash, Jessie screamed, running toward the doors. Ash looked at her through the narrowing slit. He smiled. A sad, apologetic smile. Get them safe, he mouthed. The doors slammed shut with a boom that shook the teeth in their skulls. Silence. Then, a muffled roar from deep underground. The ground heaved. Smoke poured from the vents. No, Jessie whispered. She fell to her knees in the ash. No, no, no. Cassidy stood frozen, staring at the sealed tomb. He can't be. Domino looked at her datapad. Life signs, 0. You're lying. Jessie shrieked. She scrambled at the blast doors, clawing at the metal with her bare hands until her fingernails broke. Open it, damn you. Pikachu stood by the door. His ears were flat. He let out a low, mournful cry. Suddenly, the metal of the door began to glow. It started as a dull red spot in the center, then orange, then blinding white. The metal bubbled. It warped. A fist punched through. A fist wrapped in blazing blue aura. Jessie scrambled back. The metal tore open like wet paper. Ash Ketchum stepped out of the burning hole. He was a mess. His clothes were burned away from the waist up. His skin was scorched, covered in soot and blood. But his aura was raging like a bonfire, visible even to the naked eye. It wreathed him in a terrified, majestic halo. He took 2 steps and collapsed. Jessie was there before he hit the ground. She caught him, cradling his head in her lap. You idiot. She was sobbing, tears cutting tracks through the dirt on her face. You absolute, suicidal idiot. Ash coughed, spitting up black phlegm. He looked up at her. His eyes were hazy. Did we save the Latios? He wheezed. Yes, Jessie cried. Yes, Charizard has him. He's safe. Good, Ash whispered. His eyes rolled back. Medical, Cassidy shouted, dropping beside them, ripping open her medkit. He's in shock. Ariana, get the extract chopper down here now. The flight back to Shimuti was silent, save for the beep of the heart monitor. Ash lay on a stretcher, wrapped in thermal blankets. He was stable, but his aura reserves were critically low. He had burned his life force to melt that door. Jessie sat beside him, holding his hand. She wouldn't let go. She cleaned the soot from his face with a damp cloth, her touch incredibly gentle. Cassidy watched her. She saw the look in Jessie's eyes. It wasn't just gratitude, it was devotion. He's going to kill himself, Cassidy said quietly. He fights like he doesn't expect to survive the war. Then we have to make sure he does, Jessie said, her voice hard as steel. She looked at Cassidy. We aren't just his soldiers, Cass. We have to be his shield. He protects the world. Who protects him? Cassidy looked at the sleeping man. She thought of how he had thrown them to safety, how he had smiled as the doors closed. We do, Cassidy said. We do. Domino sat in the cockpit. She deleted the message from Kincaid on her datapad without reading it. She looked back at the group. Director, she whispered to herself. You just made a very big mistake. You made us believe in him. Deep in the Indigo Plateau, Kincaid watched the footage from the facility's black box. He saw Ash melt the door. He saw the raw power. He didn't look afraid. He looked delighted. Magnificent, Kincaid murmured. He is the perfect vessel. He turned to a massive tank behind him. Inside floated a creature that looked like a humanoid Arceus, pale and terrifying. Type. Omega is hungry, Kincaid said, and I think I found its dinner. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5, The Siege of Shimuti. The peace of the Orange Archipelago was shattered not by a storm, but by a declaration. On every screen in the world, from the giant monitors in Times Square to the dusty TVs in rural Pokemon centers, Director Kincaid's face appeared. He wore the grave expression of a man burdened by duty. Citizens of the world, Kincaid began. It is with a heavy heart that I announce a grave threat to our safety. The former champion, Ash Ketchum, has been compromised. Suffering from PTSD and aura-induced psychosis, he has allied himself with the remnants of Team Rocket. He has attacked a secure research facility, stolen dangerous technology, and killed League personnel. The footage played, doctored, of course. It showed Ash's Charizard burning the facility, but the context was removed. It looked like a massacre. The League has declared Ash Ketchum a rogue element, a danger to humanity. He is to be apprehended. If he resists, he is to be terminated. On Shimuti Island, the mood was funereal. Ash stood in the command center, watching the broadcast. He was still bandaged from the Hoenn raid, his chest wrapped in gauze, his movements stiff. They turned the world against you, Ariana said, her voice hollow. In 5 minutes, you went from hero to terrorist. It's smart, Ash admitted. Isolates us. Cuts off our supply lines. Any gym leader who helps us becomes an accomplice. We have incoming. Domino shouted from the sensor station. Radar is lighting up. It's everything. Ash looked at the tactical map. A fleet of League airships was approaching from the north, destroyers were blockading the sea to the south, and swarms of black dots, shadow troopers and aerial drones, were closing in. It's a siege, Cassidy said, checking her weapon. They aren't coming to arrest you, Ash. They're coming to glass the island. Ash turned to them. You can leave. There are escape pods in the lower caverns. Lugia's currents can mask your exit. Jessie laughed. She walked up to him and poked him hard in the chest. Shut up. Just shut up. We aren't going anywhere. We're Rocket, Cassidy added, racking the slide of her rifle. We don't run from the League. We fight them. Ash looked at them. His vanguard. They were outnumbered 1,000 to 1, and they were smiling. All right, Ash said. His eyes flared blue. Let's show them what happens when they kick the hornet's nest. The battle began with fire. The League destroyers opened up with long-range artillery. Explosions rocked the cliffs of Shimuti. But Ash had prepared. Activate the barrier. The 3 elemental orbs from the Shimuti shrines, fire, ice, lightning, glowed. A massive, prismatic energy field erupted over the island, absorbing the bombardment. They can't break the barrier with conventional weapons. Ash yelled over the roar. They'll have to drop troops inside the perimeter. Sure enough, dropships began to weave through the shield's gaps, deploying squads of shadow troopers and elite ace trainers onto the beaches. Jessie. Take the east beach, Ash ordered. Use the Gyarados squad. Cassidy. Hold the temple entrance. Ariana. Domino. Sniper support from the tower. What about you? Jessie yelled, running toward the armory. I'm going to say hello to the Admiral, Ash said. On the east beach, Jessie stood atop a rocky outcrop. She wasn't just commanding, she was fighting. She threw 3 Ultra Balls. Gyarados, Seviper, Yanmega. Destroy them. Her Pokemon roared into action. The Gyarados surged from the surf, hyper-beaming a dropship out of the sky. Seviper wove through the sand, striking troopers with Poison Tail. But the enemy had numbers. A squad of Machamp charged Jessie's position. Not today. Jessie screamed. She pulled a rocket launcher, an actual RPG, from a crate. Eat this. She fired. The explosion sent bodies flying. She was laughing, a manic, terrified, exhilarating laugh. She was alive. At the temple entrance, Cassidy was fighting a more tactical battle. She had set trip mines and claymores. As the shadow troopers advanced, she detonated them in waves. Houndoom. Flamethrower. Her Houndoom bathed the choke point in fire. Cassidy picked off stragglers with her rifle. They're adapting, she calmed. They're sending in heavy armor, Rhyperior squads. Hold the line, Cass, Jessie's voice crackled back, don't let them reach the shrine. Ash was in the air. He rode Charizard, weaving through a storm of anti-air fire. Pikachu was on Charizard's head, blasting down drones with thunderbolts. Ash wasn't aiming for the troops, he was aiming for the flagship. Dragon Claw. Charizard slammed into the hull of the lead airship, tearing a hole in the armor. Ash leapt off, landing on the deck. He was instantly surrounded by 20 elite soldiers. Surrender, catch 'em. The captain yelled. Ash didn't speak. He drew a sword, a katana he had taken from the Shamuti armory. He channeled his aura into the blade. It glowed with a terrifying, ethereal light. He moved. He was a whirlwind. He parried bullets. He cut through rifle barrels. He moved with a speed that made him look like a ghost. He didn't kill. He struck nerve clusters, shattered weapons, knocked them unconscious. He reached the bridge. He kicked the door in. The admiral stared at him, pale. Call off the attack, Ash said, holding the glowing sword to the admiral's throat. I can't, the admiral whispered. Kincaid. He has overrides. The ships are on autopilot. The troops are mind-controlled. We're just pawns. Ash lowered the sword. Get to the escape pods. He smashed the control console. The ship began to list. Back on the ground, things were getting desperate. The barrier was failing. The bombardment was getting through. We're being overrun. Ariana screamed. They have air superiority. A massive explosion hit the east beach. Jessie was thrown into the rocks. She lay there, dazed, blood running down her face. A shadow Ursaring loomed over her, raising its claws to finish her. Wobbuffet. Counter. Wobbuffet burst from his ball, glowing red. He took the hit, absorbed the energy, and blasted the Ursaring back into the ocean. Jessie scrambled up. Thanks, buddy, but there were more, hundreds more. Ash landed in the courtyard. The girls were falling back. They were huddled around the central shrine, exhausted, bleeding, out of ammo. We can't hold them, Cassidy panted, clutching a wounded arm. There are too many. Ash looked at the sky. A second fleet was arriving, and in the center, a massive, floating fortress. Kincaid's personal command ship. From the fortress, a beam of purple light charged. They're going to fire the Omega Cannon, Domino said, her voice trembling. It'll vaporize the island. Ash looked at his friends. He looked at Jessie, battered but defiant. At Cassidy, holding her Houndoom. At Ariana and Domino. He made a choice. Get to the shrine's lower chamber, Ash said. There's a submersible. It's pre-programmed for coordinates in Alola. We aren't leaving you, Jessie screamed. You are, Ash roared. It was the voice of the monarch. It brooked no argument. If you stay, we all die. If you go, you can finish the fight. He grabbed Jessie by the shoulders. He pulled her close and kissed her. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was desperate, fierce, a goodbye written in blood and adrenaline. He pulled back. Go. He turned and faced the incoming army. Ash, no, Cassidy yelled, grabbing Jessie as the redhead tried to lunge back. We have to go. Don't let his sacrifice be for nothing. They dragged Jessie toward the hidden elevator. Ash stood alone in the courtyard. The Omega Cannon fired. A beam of pure destruction descended. Ash closed his eyes. He reached deep inside himself, deeper than he had ever gone. He touched the core of his aura, the spark of life that connected him to every Pokémon he had ever met. Lucario. Greninja. Charizard. Sceptile. Infernape. Pikachu. His team surrounded him. They poured their energy into him. Ash threw his hands up. A shield of golden light erupted. It wasn't just aura. It was the bond. It was the crystallized will of a master. The beam hit the shield. The sound was deafening. The ground melted. The air turned to plasma. Ash screamed. His skin began to crack. The power was too much. It was tearing him apart. But he held. He held long enough for the submersible to launch. Long enough to see the wake of his friends escaping into the deep ocean. Run, Ash whispered. The shield shattered. The purple light consumed him. The island of Shamuti fell silent. The smoke cleared. The shrine was a crater. Director Kincaid watched from his bridge. Target neutralized. Retrieve the body, if there's anything left. Down in the smoking ruin, a hand twitched. Ash was alive. Barely. He was burned, broken, his aura completely drained. He couldn't move. He couldn't see. Boots crunched on the glassed earth. Impressive, Kincaid's voice said. You survived a god-killer weapon. You really are special, Ash. Two shadow guards picked Ash up. He hung limp in their grip. Take him to the stasis tank, Kincaid ordered. Project Omega needs a pilot, and I think we just found the only mind strong enough to control it. Ash tried to struggle, but darkness took him. Deep under the ocean, in the silent submersible, Jessie sat on the floor, staring at nothing. The radio static cleared. A news report came through. Victory for the League. The terrorist Ash Ketchum has been eliminated. Cassidy turned the radio off. Silence stretched for a long time. Jessie stood up. She wiped the blood from her face. Her eyes were dry. They were voids of cold, absolute hatred. He isn't dead, Jessie said. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. I can still feel him. The bond, it isn't broken. She looked at the others. We are going to burn the League to the ground, Jessie said. We are going to find every person responsible, and we are going to make them wish they had died on Shamuti. She picked up her rocket launcher. Cassidy. Contact the underworld. Call Team Magma. Call Aqua. Call the drunks in the bars. I don't care. We are raising an army. And then? Domino asked. Then, Jessie said, we are going to get our king back. Chapter 5 End. Chapter 6. The descent. The world had moved on with terrifying speed. In the 4 weeks since the destruction of Shamuti Island, the Indigo League had consolidated its power. The news cycle was dominated by reports of stability operations and the successful purging of radical elements. The face of Director Kincaid was everywhere, a benevolent patriarch promising a future free from the chaotic whims of superpowered beasts. But in the underbelly of the world, in the places where the neon lights of the League didn't reach, there was a different kind of energy. A brewing storm. Pyrite Town, in the desolate ore region, was a cesspool of gamblers, thieves, and trainers who had been banned from sanctioned competition. The air smelled of sulfur and stale beer. The heavy iron door of the Gear and Cog tavern slammed open. The noise inside, the clinking of glasses, the shouting of bets over an arm wrestling match between a machoke and a cyborg, died instantly. 4 figures stood in the doorway. Jessie stepped forward. She wore a long, dust-coated trench coat over body armor. Her hair was pulled back in a severe tail, and her face was gaunt, her eyes burning with a fanaticism that made the hardened criminals closest to the door recoil. She walked to the center of the room. Cassidy, Ariana, and Domino fanned out behind her, hands hovering near their belts. They didn't have pokeballs visible. They had pistols. I'm looking for Tabitha, Jessie announced. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried a razor edge that cut through the smoke. A large man in the back, wearing the faded red hoodie of Team Magma, laughed. He had a scar running through one eye and a mug filled with sludge. Magma is dead, sweetheart. Tabitha is retired. Go peddle your whatever you're selling somewhere else. Jessie didn't look at him. She looked at the shadowy booth in the corner. I didn't ask for commentary. I asked for the admin. The man stood up, kicking his chair back. You got ears, lady? I said. Jessie moved. It was a blur of motion that the patrons of the bar were too drunk to track. She didn't draw a Pokemon. She drew a telescoping steel baton, closed the distance, and shattered the man's kneecap with a sickening crunch. As he fell screaming, she drove the tip of the baton into his solar plexus, silencing him instantly. She stood over him, breathing calmly. She looked back at the corner booth. I don't have time for this, Jessie said. The League thinks Ash Ketchum is dead. You all think he's dead. But I know where he is. And I'm building an army to get him back. A figure emerged from the shadows of the booth. Tabitha, the former admin of Team Magma, looked older, fatter, and tired. But his eyes were sharp. Ketchum, Tabitha grunted. The boy who ruined our plans. Why would I help you save him? Because, Cassidy said, stepping up beside Jessie, Kincaid isn't just hunting us. He's hunting Groudon. Kyogre. Rayquaza. He's building a machine to drain them dry. If you want your precious land expansion, or whatever ideology you cling to, you need the monarch alive to stop him. Tabitha stared at them. He looked at the violence in Jessie's stance, the cold calculation in Cassidy's eyes. You rocket witches, Tabitha chuckled darkly. You were always a joke. When did you become this? When they took everything from us, Jessie said. Are you in, or do I burn this bar down with you inside? Tabitha finished his drink. He slammed the glass down. I can get you 3 dropships and a demolition crew. But if we die, I'm haunting you. The void. There was no time. There was only the scream. Ash Ketchum floated in a suspension of viscous, breathable fluid. He couldn't move. Neural clamps were drilled into his spine, overriding his motor functions. Tubes were inserted into his arms, chest, and neck, pumping a cocktail of nutrients and stimulants directly into his bloodstream. He wasn't asleep. He was hyper-aware. The machine, type Omega, was connected to his brain. It was a vast, artificial consciousness, cold and hungry. It didn't have a soul. It had a directive. Consume. Through the interface, Ash could feel them. The prisoners. He felt the agony of a Zapdos being vivisected in a lab in Kanto. He felt the terror of a Suicune being hunted by drones in Johto. The machine was using his aura, his unique, empathetic connection to all living things, as a targeting system. It was forcing him to locate the gods so it could eat them. Stop, Ash screamed in his mind. Let them go. Insufficient privileges, the machine's voice droned in his skull. Subject 01. Output nominal. Increasing extraction rate. Pain, white and blinding, ripped through his nervous system. The machine siphoned his aura to power its shielding. It was eating him, cell by cell, regenerating him with chemicals only to eat him again. Hold on, he whispered into the void, thinking of a red-haired woman with a temper like a wildfire. I'm still here. The Sky Fortress. Daedalus high above the clouds, cruising at an altitude of 40,000 feet, the Sylph flagship Daedalus cast a shadow over the ocean. It was a flying city, a fortress of black steel and bristling turrets. Inside the bridge, Director Kincaid stood watching the telemetry. Subject 01 is showing signs of neural degradation, a scientist reported nervously. If we push him harder, his mind might fracture. If he goes brain dead, the Omega interface fails. He won't break, Kincaid said, sipping a glass of water. He has the will of a shonen protagonist. It's infinitely exploitable. Increase power to the primary cannon. We are approaching the Hall of Origin. Sir, a radar operator shouted. Contact. Multiple contacts. Coming up from the cloud layer. Kincaid frowned. Intercept drones. No sir. It's old tech. Scavenged transports. Outside, the sky erupted. 3 rust bucket dropships broke through the clouds, their engines screaming. They were painted with mismatched colors, magma red, aqua blue, rocket black. This is the vanguard to all units. Jessie's voice crackled over the open frequency. Target the engines, don't hit the central spire. The dropships opened fire. It wasn't the precision laser fire of the League. It was the messy, brutal ballistic fire of the underworld. Rockets, heavy machine guns, hyperbeams from Pokémon riding on the hulls. Launch countermeasures. Kincaid ordered. Swarms of Sylph drones buzzed out of the Daedalus hangars. Cassidy, now, Jessie yelled. From the cargo bay of the lead dropship, a Metagross dropped. It didn't fly. It fell like a meteor. But as it fell, Cassidy, strapped to its back, yelled a command. Psychic. Catch us. The Metagross glowed blue, halting its momentum just meters above the Daedalus flight deck. It slammed down, magnetic claws anchoring it to the steel. Cassidy rolled off, unholstering her rifle. Clear the deck. Domino and Ariana landed behind her, followed by a squad of Tabitha's heavy grunts. Breaching charge. Ariana slapped a massive brick of C4 onto the airlock door. Boom. The door blew inward. The team poured into the fortress. The corridors of the Daedalus were a kill zone. Shadow troopers flooded the hallways, firing energy rifles. Jessie led the charge. She was a woman possessed. Mimikyu. Shadow Claw. Seviper. Poison Tail. Her Pokémon tore through the synthetic soldiers. Jessie didn't stop for cover. She shot a trooper in the helmet, kicked another down a service shaft, and kept running. Where is he? Jessie screamed into her comms. Domino. Central Core. Domino replied, hacking a door panel while bullets whizzed past her head. Sector 0. But it's guarded. Thermal scans show something big. I don't care if it's Arceus himself, Jessie snarled. Move. They fought their way down 10 levels. They lost people. Tabitha's grunts stayed behind to hold choke points, dying so the vanguard could advance. They reached the blast doors of the core. Wobbuffet, Jessie yelled. The blue blob Pokemon popped out. Wobbuffet, reflect the door. It made no sense physically, but Wobbuffet understood the intent. He absorbed the kinetic energy of the battle raging behind them and slammed his body against the blast door. The accumulated force blew the heavy steel hinges apart. The doors fell. The core chamber was freezing. In the center, bathed in harsh white light, was the tank. Jessie froze. Ash was floating there. He looked like a corpse. His skin was gray, his ribs visible through his chest. His eyes were open, but they were entirely white, no iris, no pupil. Oh, Ash, Cassidy whispered, lowering her gun. Intruders. The voice was synthetic. From the shadows beneath the tank, a creature rose. It was purple, insectoid, with a massive cannon on its back. Genesect. But this one was larger, armored in gold plating. Eliminate, the Genesect droned. It fired. A techno-blast beam of pure energy. Look out. Ariana shoved Jessie aside. The beam hit Ariana. There was no scream. Just a flash of light. When it faded, Ariana was gone. Only a scorch mark remained on the floor. Ariana. Domino shrieked. Jessie scrambled to her feet, her eyes wide with shock. Then, the shock turned to something colder. You killed her, Jessie whispered. She looked at the Genesect. She looked at Ash, trapped in the machine that this monster was guarding. Kill it, Jessie roared. Everything you have. Fire. Cassidy, Domino, and Jessie unleashed hell. Houndoom, Yanmega, Manectric, every Pokemon they had fired at once. The Genesect raised a shield. It absorbed the attacks effortlessly. Threat level. Minimal, the machine droned. It charged its cannon again. We can't scratch it, Cassidy yelled. It's too strong. Jessie looked at the tank. She looked at Ash. She didn't run at the Genesect. She ran at the tank. Target acquisition. Redistribution, the Genesect pivoted, aiming at Jessie. Jessie. No. Cassidy screamed. Jessie ignored the cannon. She sprinted up the ramp toward the glass cylinder. She pressed her hand against the glass. Ash. She screamed, her voice cracking with desperate grief. Wake up. You promised I wouldn't be alone. The Genesect fired. The beam tore through the air. Inside the tank, Ash's white eyes suddenly developed a pupil of burning, jagged red. Crack. The glass didn't break from the outside, it exploded from the inside. A shockwave of golden aura erupted from the tank, intercepting the technoblast and scattering it into harmless sparks. The liquid flooded the platform, washing Jessie off her feet. Ash fell out of the broken machine. He hit the metal grating hard, coughing up fluid, wires ripping from his skin. The Genesect paused, recalibrating. Subject 01. Uncontained. Reinitiating capture protocol. It stepped forward to grab Ash. Ash lifted his head. He didn't look like a hero. He looked like a demon. His aura wasn't the calm blue of a guardian. It was a chaotic, violent storm of red and gold. He was starving, tortured, and absolutely furious. Pika. Shoo. It was a whisper. From the wreckage of the corridor, a yellow blur shot past the stunned women. Pikachu, who had been fighting in the rearguard, vaulted over Jessie's head. He landed in front of Ash. His cheeks sparked. He saw his trainer, broken, bleeding. Pikachu let out a sound that wasn't a Pika. It was a guttural snarl. Ash reached out a trembling hand and grabbed Pikachu's tail. Sink, Ash rasped. The air pressure in the room dropped. Ash stood up. He swayed, wires trailing from his arms, but as he stood, Pikachu began to glow. The electricity turned blue. Ash's body began to glow with the same blue light. The Genesect fired again. Ash didn't dodge. He caught the beam, with his bare hand. He crushed the energy in his palm, dispersing it. You hurt them, Ash said. His voice sounded like two people speaking at once, human and Pokemon. He vanished. He reappeared instantly in front of the Genesect. He didn't use a move. He used a fist, wrapped in the combined aura of a monarch and his starter. He punched the Genesect in the faceplate. Metal crumpled. The cyborg Pokémon was launched backward, smashing through the reactor wall and out into the open sky. Ash stood there, panting, the blue light flickering. He looked at the scorched spot where Ariana had stood. He fell to his knees. Ash! Jessie scrambled over the wet floor. She grabbed him, pulling his wet, shivering body against hers. I got you, she sobbed, rocking him. I got you, you're safe. Ash blinked, the demonic red fading from his eyes, replaced by a hazy, exhausted brown. He looked at Jessie. He reached up, his hand shaking uncontrollably, and touched her face. You came, he whispered, as if he couldn't believe it. Of course I came, you idiot, Jessie cried, pressing her forehead against his. You're mine. Cassidy and Domino rushed over. Domino was checking a datapad, tears streaming down her face for Ariana. The reactor is critical, Domino said, her voice trembling. The Genesect smashed the coolant. This whole ship is going down in 2 minutes. We need to go, Cassidy urged. Jessie, get him up. Ash tried to stand but collapsed. Can't, legs don't work. Jessie didn't hesitate. She grabbed his arm, slinging it over her shoulder. Cassidy took the other. We carry him, Jessie said. They hauled him toward the exit. The ship was tilting, gravity shifting as the Daedalus began its death spiral toward the ocean. They reached the flight deck. It was chaos. Fires, explosions. Their dropship was burning. We're trapped. Tabitha yelled from behind a crate. No transport. They were stranded on a falling fortress. Ash looked at the sky. He closed his eyes. He concentrated, pushing past the pain, past the exhaustion. He reached out with his aura, not to command, to ask. Help. The clouds above them began to swirl. A massive shadow descended. It wasn't a machine. A cry echoed, a song that vibrated in their bones. Lugia. The guardian of the seas burst through the smoke, its massive white wings creating a wind tunnel that blew the flames away. Get on, Ash rasped. Jessie, Cassidy, Domino, Tabitha, and the survivors scrambled onto the legendary bird's back. Ash was pulled up last. Lugia banked hard, diving away from the Daedalus just as the fortress's reactor went critical. A blinding sphere of light consumed the airship. The shockwave hit them, but Lugia shielded them with a psychic barrier. They watched as the symbol of Kincaid's power disintegrated and fell into the sea. The aftermath. Lugia landed on a remote island in the Sevi chain. The survivors collapsed on the sand. Jessie sat apart from the others, holding Ash. He was unconscious again, wrapped in a survival blanket. Cassidy walked over. She looked exhausted. Ariana is gone, Cassidy said softly. I know, Jessie said. She brushed wet hair from Ash's forehead. Kincaid wasn't on the ship, Domino reported, walking up. He was controlling it remotely from the Indigo Plateau. He still has the Omega data. And he still has the captured legendaries. Jessie looked down at Ash. He looked peaceful for the first time in weeks. He's going to wake up, Jessie said, and when he does, he's going to be broken. He felt everything that machine did. Then we fix him, Cassidy said. She sat down in the sand next to Jessie. We fix him, and then we go to the Indigo Plateau. Jessie nodded. She looked at the horizon, where the sun was rising. It wasn't a hopeful sunrise. It was a bloody, red dawn. War, Jessie whispered. It's not a rescue mission anymore, it's a war. Chapter 6 End. Chapter 7. The Crown of Ashes. The Indigo Plateau did not look like the site of a sporting event. It looked like a tombstone erected to the death of the old world. The storm that raged above the mountain was unnatural. It was a vortex of purple and black clouds, swirling around the central spire where the Pokémon League headquarters pierced the sky. Lightning didn't flash. It crawled across the clouds like glowing veins. The air pressure was so immense that the rain falling on the stone steps felt heavy like oil. At the base of the mountain, the Army of the Damned had assembled. It was a ragtag force that would have been laughable in any other era. There were Team Magma grunts in faded hoodies standing shoulder to shoulder with aquamarines. There were biker gangs from Kanto, disgraced gym leaders from the minor leagues, and rocket operatives who had refused to fade into obscurity. And at their head stood Ash Ketchum. He wore no armor. He wore the tattered remains of the tactical gear he had escaped the Daedalus in, washed clean but stained with the memory of battle. His right arm was heavily bandaged, glowing faintly blue beneath the gauze. He didn't look like a champion. He looked like a wraith, thin, scarred, his eyes burning with a quiet, terrifying intensity. To his right stood Jessie. She had traded her disguise for full combat gear, a black tactical vest over a red undersuit. She held an assault rifle with the ease of a veteran, her hair a crimson banner in the wind. To his left was Cassidy, checking the charge on a heavy EMP cannon. Beside her, Domino sharpened her ceramic blades, her face a mask of cold focus. They have the high ground, Cassidy noted, her voice barely audible over the thunder, and they have the Elite Four. The Elite Four are compromised, Ash said. His voice was raspy, damaged from the screaming in the tank. Kincaid has them under neural lock. Don't kill them. Incapacitate them. And Kincaid? Jessie asked, looking at the spire. He's mine, Ash said. He stepped forward. He didn't shout a rallying cry. He didn't give a speech about friendship. He simply raised his uninjured hand and pointed at the summit. Burn it down. The assault was a chaotic, beautiful disaster. Tabitha and the heavy support units launched a barrage of rock and fire at the perimeter defenses, drawing the fire of the automated turrets. The sky lit up as Dragonites and Salamences clashed with Sylph drones. Ash's vanguard moved through the center. They were a spear tip. They breached the first gate. Lance, the Dragon Master, stood there. His eyes were glazed, his movements stiff. Beside him, his Dragonite roared, a collar of pulsating light around its neck. Forgive me, Lance, Ash whispered. Pikachu, Volt Tackle. Pikachu launched himself, a golden comet, but he didn't aim for Dragonite. He aimed for the collar. Simultaneously, Ash moved. He didn't command a Pokémon, he ran straight at the champion of Johto. Lance commanded Dragonite to fire a Hyper Beam. Wobbuffet, Jessie screamed, diving in front of Ash. The blue blob materialized, absorbing the God-tier energy blast. The feedback cracked the pavement, but Wobbuffet held. Ash slid under the beam. He reached Lance. He didn't punch him. He placed his palm on Lance's forehead. Pulse. A shockwave of aura disrupted the neural inhibitor. Lance gasped, his eyes clearing for a second before he collapsed, unconscious. One down, Domino said, kicking a drone out of the air, 3 to go. They fought their way up the stairs. It was a gauntlet. Against Bruno's fighting types, Cassidy used localized gravity traps. Against Agatha's ghosts, Domino used spectral frequency jammers. They weren't fighting a Pokémon battle. They were fighting a war. They used technology, dirty tactics, and the sheer overwhelming force of Ash's aura to shatter the rules of engagement. By the time they reached the heavy blast doors of the champion's chamber, they were bleeding, exhausted, and running on fumes. Ash leaned against the door. He could feel it inside. The presence. It wasn't a Pokémon. It was a void. He's waiting, Ash said. Let him wait, Jessie said, reloading her weapon. Let him sweat. Ash looked at her. He looked at Cassidy and Domino. Whatever happens in there, Ash said softly, don't let him separate us. The machine hunts isolated targets. Jessie reached out and squeezed his hand. Together. Ash flared his aura. The blast doors groaned and blew inward. The champion's chamber had been gutted. The statues of past victors were gone. The stadium seating was gone. In its place was a machine that defied geometry. It was a ring of spinning monolithic plates, suspended over a pit of pure white energy, and in the center of the ring floated Type Omega. It was humanoid, but barely. It was composed of shifting, liquid metal that resembled mercury. It had 18 eyes, arranged in a halo around a faceless head. Each eye glowed with the color of a different type. And suspended in the energy pit below were the batteries. Rayquaza, Giratina, Zekrom, Reshiram. They were chained in light, their life force being siphoned upward into the monster. Director Kincaid stood on a platform overlooking the horror. He wore a pristine white suit. He looked like a savior. You're late, Ash, Kincaid said, his voice amplified by the acoustics of the room. I expected you an hour ago. Though I admit, dismantling the Elite Four without killing them was impressive. Let them go, Kincaid, Ash said, walking into the light. The girls fanned out behind him, weapons raised. Go. Kincaid laughed. Where would they go? Back to their mountains to cause earthquakes? Back to the sea to cause tsunamis? Look at them, Ash. They're chaos incarnate. I am bringing order. You're killing them, Ash said. The aura around him began to turn red. The anger was rising. You're erasing the soul of the world. I am debugging the universe, Kincaid roared. Humanity has lived in fear of these beasts for too long. We pray to them not to drown us, not to burn us. No more. Today, we deify ourselves. Type. Omega is the new god. A god that obeys me. He raised a hand. Omega. Erase. The creature shifted. Its 18 eyes focused on Ash. The air instantly turned to vacuum. Move, Cassidy screamed. They dove as a beam of white light, judgment, vaporized the spot where they had been standing. Pikachu. Thunderbolt, Ash commanded. Pikachu fired. The electricity hit Omega and vanished. Type. Ground, Kincaid sneered. Omega changes typing instantaneously to grant immunity. You cannot harm it with Pokemon moves. It is mathematically impossible. Then we don't use Pokemon moves, Jessie yelled. She raised her rocket launcher and fired. The projectile streaked across the room. Omega didn't move. The rocket hit its chest. The explosion was massive. Smoke obscured the creature. Did we get it? Domino asked. The smoke cleared. Omega was untouched. A barrier of psychic energy shimmered around it. Physical projectiles detected. The machine droned. Kinetic barrier active. It raised a hand. Gravity increased tenfold. Jessie, Cassidy, and Domino were slammed into the floor. Their weapons clattered away. They couldn't move. They were pinned like insects. Ash stayed standing. His knees buckled, his bones creaked, but his aura flared, pushing back against the gravity. Strong, Kincaid mused, but not strong enough. Omega floated down. It hovered in front of Ash. It formed a blade of purple energy, a spatial rend. Ash didn't have a weapon. His Pokemon were useless. His friends were pinned. He closed his eyes. I am not a trainer, he thought. I am the monarch. He remembered the training in the Tree of Beginning. He remembered the bond with Greninja. He remembered the feeling of Jessie's hand in his. He opened his eyes. They were glowing a blinding, solid blue. Ash stepped forward. He moved through the gravity field. What? Kincaid gasped. Ash grabbed the energy blade with his bare hand. His skin sizzled, blood boiled, but he held it, he crushed it. Lucario. Ash roared. Bone rush, to me. Lucario, struggling on the floor, threw his bone staff. Ash caught it. He channeled his entire life force into the weapon. It extended, turning into a lance of pure aura. Ash lunged. He drove the lance into Omega's chest. The creature shrieked. A digital scream of error codes. Impossible. Kincaid yelled. Aura cannot pierce the null plate. It's not just aura, Ash shouted, twisting the lance. It's will. The machine destabilized. The gravity field flickered. Now, Ash screamed. Jessie, Cassidy. The gravity lifted for a second. Jessie didn't go for her gun. She saw Ash's hand burning. She saw him dying to hold that connection. She sprinted. She tackled Ash from behind, not to knock him down, but to brace him. She wrapped her arms around his waist, digging her heels into the floor. Push, Jessie screamed. Cassidy and Domino joined in, grabbing Ash's shoulders, adding their weight, their strength to his. We are with you. Cassidy yelled. Ash felt it. It wasn't aura. It was just human warmth. It was the grounding reality of people who loved him. It gave him the one thing the machine didn't have, adrenaline. Ash roared. He didn't just pierce the chest, he ripped the lance upward. He sliced Type Omega in half. The explosion was silent. A wave of white light expanded, washing over the room. The world went white. Then, it went dark. Ash was lying on the cold floor. He couldn't feel his arms. He couldn't hear anything but a high-pitched ringing. Ash. The voice was muffled. Ash, breathe. He gasped, air rushing into his lungs. He opened his eyes. Jessie was hovering over him. Her face was covered in soot, tears making tracks through the grime. She was checking his pulse. I'm okay, Ash wheezed. He sat up slowly. The machine was gone. The batteries were shattered. Rayquaza and the other legendaries were gone. Freed, vanished into the ether. In the center of the room, Kincaid lay broken. The feedback from the neural link had shattered his mind. He was staring at the ceiling, drooling, muttering equations that no longer made sense. Ash stood up. He stumbled. Jessie and Cassidy caught him instantly. They walked him to the edge of the platform. Outside, the storm was breaking. The clouds were parting, revealing a sunrise that painted the Indigo Plateau in gold. The fighting had stopped. The Sylph drones had deactivated. The soldiers, freed from the control signal, were dropping their weapons. Ash looked out at the world. "It's over," Domino whispered. Ash looked at his hand, scarred, burned, shaking. Then he looked at the women holding him up. "No," Ash said. He leaned his head against Jessie's shoulder. "It's just starting." Epilogue. The Monarch's Rest 6 months later. The pallet house was quiet. It had been rebuilt, expanded. It wasn't a fortress anymore, but it was private. Ash sat on the veranda, looking out at the fields. Pikachu was sleeping in a sunbeam on the railing. Ash held a cane in his hand. His right leg still gave him trouble on rainy days, and his aura was quiet. He had burned so much of it that he was, for the first time in his life, almost normal. The screen door slid open. Jessie walked out. She wore a simple sundress, her hair loose. She carried 2 mugs of coffee. She sat down next to him, handing him a mug. "Cassidy called," Jessie said. "The reformation of the league is going well. Goodshow is retiring. They want you to nominate the next chairman." "I nominate Snorlax," Ash said, taking a sip. "He's got the right temperament." Jessie laughed. It was a light, free sound. A sound that belonged to a woman who wasn't looking over her shoulder anymore. "And Domino says the remnants of Sylph have been fully absorbed into the Devon Corporation," Jessie continued. "She's enjoying being a CEO." "She's terrifying," Ash noted. "She is," Jessie agreed. They sat in silence for a moment, watching a flock of Pidgey fly overhead. "Do you miss it?" Jessie asked suddenly. "The power? Being the God Slayer?" Ash looked at her. He reached out and took her hand. His grip was firm. "I miss the adventure," Ash said, "but I don't miss the war." He looked at the scar on his palm. "I spent my whole life running," Ash said. "Chasing the horizon. Trying to be the best." He looked into Jessie's eyes. "I think I just wanted to find a place where I didn't have to run anymore." Jessie squeezed his hand. She leaned over and kissed him, softly, lingeringly. "You're home, Ash," she whispered. From inside the house, Cassidy's voice called out. "Hey! Who ate the last of the pancakes?" "I know it was you, Ketchum." Ash grinned. "I should probably run." "Don't you dare," Jessie smiled, pulling him back. "Face the music, Monarch." Ash laughed. He looked at the sun, at his Pokémon playing in the field, at the woman beside him. The crown of ashes was heavy. But for the first time, he wasn't carrying it alone. Chapter 7 End.